Hello, everyone.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Okay, feel free to add yourself. Okay, you're already adding yourself to the list. I'm posting this here.
Everyone.
Good morning.
Hello, you have a very nice Christmas tree in the back, Alex.
Well, I got to do something useful. So yeah, ta-da. No, my kids decorated it. It was a good way to stick them to somewhere else in the room for 30 minutes. So they were digging baubles out of the box and gave me time to make coffee. So it was well and truly worth it.
Okay, we have a nice agenda here today. Conveyor, some pattern collection updates, and some potato heads updates and walkthroughs.
Oh, you know I've got stuff to say.
By the way, for the next in-person KubeCon, we need to get potato head t-shirts.
Yes.
Good idea.
I wanted to actually find a service
stickers,
that,
right?
yeah. I wanted to find a service that can create them on the fly. So depending on which version you deploy, you get a different t-shirt. That would actually be ideal.
Does that mean we all have to like band together to actually build the full potato head?
Ah, you mean like everybody's just wearing the
Yeah,
product?
every service should be like a limb, you know?
I get the right arm.
Yeah. I love just the commit messages. Left arm is broken, fixing left arm. That was like amazing. I think that's the most funny commit messages that are out there. All right, so we are 3 minutes in. Let's give people 1 more minute and then we, for the sake of time, start talking about the submission work. I think some people might be out this week, obviously, also for reInvent, so we try to post this then later on. Okay. All right. Yeah, I think let's get started. James, do you want to get started on the OnConveyor?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. So I know I think 2 weeks ago when we met, or 3 weeks ago, I can't remember how often this is, but when we met, I know I had the conveyor community had applied for sandbox status, and then I know we got back a message. There was a message posted saying, was this too specific to OpenShift? And so then I joined, and then we had spoken about last time, but we didn't have everybody here. I think that we have here now. That's the chairs and the tech leads. So I linked in here to the if you click on the link that I put in the agenda, that'll actually take you to kind of, you know, I tried to respond to some of the questions to show that, you know, it's not specific to OpenShift. In fact, like our demonstrations and things of that nature were done on upstream Kubernetes and using those things. So, and anything we do find where there's challenges or issues, we're you know, we basically want to make this not specific to a distribution. And then I tried to answer some of the other projects as well, as far as like, how could it ever move from sandbox to graduated? And so we don't really see it, modernization and migration, as like a one-time thing, but as an ongoing process that will probably continue to happen. So we expect the project to actually be long-lived inside of people's clusters. And then I include some GitHub issues from outside that you can see outsiders from various organizations opening this. Like I think DigitalOcean was one of them. There's a couple of others basically. So that's kind of, I was just trying to answer the questions that I know had come up to see if it helps, in light of you guys supporting to the TOC, the idea to move it forward. But I don't know if you've all had a chance to read this.
Not yet, to be fair. I think we can, thanks for posting it in here. I think we can follow up on this one. Is there any example how I can take like an existing service using Conveyor and deploy it to Kubernetes? I'm just wondering, anything we should give back to the TOC as an example or recording of how this actually works in practice? I mean, given what the project does, it might be a bit hard maybe, but maybe there is something.
Yeah, actually right in the middle of the second question that I answered on there, it says, there's a link, it says this end-to-end demonstration, and I'll paste it in the chat here too. You don't open it now because it'll start playing on YouTube, but it says this right in the middle of this end-to-end demonstration, up a little bit right in the center of your screen.
Here we go. Yeah, this one here that I'm not clicking on right now.
That's like a 45-minute demo that we do where we kind of take an end-tier application, we break it down, we move from like some Spring Boot apps over from Cloud Foundry into Kubernetes, show how we could do that, show how we could rehost a VM into KubeVirt, we show how we, assess and analyze an application. Yeah.
I just, if I can ask a question whilst we're looking at this, I think one of the things that is most prevalent in my mind is who are going to be the main drivers of the project, especially like move to Kube. Like, who are the contributors be? Who do you see that as? Will it be folks who are end users who have accomplished and want to add features, or will it be companies who are trying to influence migration to their platform? Do you want to maybe shed some light on what your thoughts are? Because I think that'll be a really relevant point for the TOC.
Yeah. So I think there are end users that will contribute. We actually have one financial service customer who is using, not Move to Kube, but they're actually using a portion of the Tackle project inside of Conveyor to migrate a bunch of Tomcat applications and basically use it to build rules to validate things are done correctly and match the 12-factor apps. So we do have, I think end users is one, but I think another one is actually most likely global system integrators. I think global system integrators are because they all have their various kind of migration factories and methodologies, but the reality is they're not, there's no real differentiation, and it takes them a lot of time to keep all those tools and that tool chain up to date. So the idea would be that they can leverage these as a more common tool chain as well. So I think there's the global system integrator space, and then we would love to have more other vendors and platform vendors involved in it too. We've had the team from VMware show us some of their tooling, but as far as I understand, it's proprietary and licensed. So at this point, I don't think they were interested in kind of to have a common tool chain.
Hong Chao, can you please mute yourself while not speaking, because we hear you coughing here, to not interrupt James. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for answering. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, other thanks for sharing the details. I think giving us some time to follow up on looking also at the examples. But right now we have no GSIs contributing. So this is something where you would want to go. Yeah,
so we have we have a lot of people in the community that are have joined the mailing lists and all those sorts of things that are from Wipro, HCL, Accenture, so on and so forth. We don't have, as far as I know, we don't have any pull requests from any of them, but we do know we do know that some of them have been using the tools, just based on their questions in chat and other things as well.
Yeah, I might have checked this myself, but I'm asking here because we already have you here. Do we have an adopters MD file where you're listing who's using it, maybe, and some of them are mentioned in there?
Well, you could see actually in the questions, the last question where I sent you I pasted a bunch of GitHub, issues that were opened by folks, and if you go look at who they are, you can see, like I mentioned, some of them. I think one of them's from DigitalOcean. There's a couple. Anyway, you could see the ones that are open. Those are all open issues by external users.
I think what is challenging is that there it's an umbrella of projects, under a single moniker. And I think that's the thing that takes some getting used to, because you've got tackle, forklift, crane, etc., and each one on its own needs to have a community base and pull requests in the current format for the TOC. It might be worth considering bringing them into, I guess, the conveyor umbrella in a slightly more tight sense. I get the impression that they're distributed components at the moment, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I think the apprehension here is, and we're just trying to understand it, it's more of a human thing. It's just that there are a few different moving parts that we need to kind of figure out each one and its its appeal to the community and how we see it integrating into the existing ecosystem.
And also what's sometimes challenging with like these umbrella projects, and we had it with other projects as well, like when Argo had their submission, for example, they have a lot of different projects inside of Argo as well. How it's growing and how you start new projects in there. I mean, for a sandbox, it doesn't really matter that much, honestly. But assume you move later on to incubation and graduate it, and then you start something new. Like, how do you decide whether you add another tool in there? So you might have a very early stage tool that you would for sandbox, but then it's part of an incubated or graduated project, and there's no right answer there. But that's always the challenge, like with this tool and collection of tool type of projects, that sometimes, also to Alex's point, make them a bit hard to grasp. Like, also understand, I know for sandbox you are obviously getting a lot of questions, but this would be a question like in incubation that you would definitely get, like, how do you ensure that we're not just adding like 15 other tools at a very early stage? How would the users understand which maturity is in there? How do you even decide about adding new tools in there?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. We do have like a governance model up, over on GitHub that, we haven't, just being that so far we haven't had to have a lot of those conversations, but there are areas like, for example, with Move to Cube, a lot of the underlying technology actually is going to be integrated with Tackle and used by Tackle to like generate manifests and things like that, or, and do some of that work because it could already do that. So I could foresee actually where either there's more tools that, I would love to see people contribute more tooling to the community, right? If there's things that are valuable that we can get them in there and help them, that would be one thing. But then I also see where some of these might actually come together and actually merge over time, and we might end up with less. I know Todd's doing something similar with his team's working on Crane inside there, and they're doing something similar as well. So it could be that, in other words, it could be that we have a far more opinionated, set of tools. Right now, I think we've just brought them together under the umbrella and they're there. But over time, I think the hope is that it becomes more of a platform and an opinionated, way of modernizing applications.
Just to reflect on that, I think that's a really important distinction from a marketing perspective. I think that could really help the project in terms of growth. If Tackle was kind of your foundational point and you had modules and components that were leveraged off of that, because one of the big problems understanding this is that, not understanding it, sorry, that's the wrong word. I think one of the challenges is that this project requires state. You require to be in a position where you need to migrate Whereas there aren't a lot of CNCF projects that I'm aware of, if any that I can think of, that require you to already be in a state where you require to move it, say, a JVM-based application off Cloud Foundry. So, and that's not to say this isn't an awesome idea. I'm just trying to say that this is a particularly challenging concept, and maybe reducing the amount of moving parts, or to at least simplify it, would be really beneficial. Because I think that there'll be folks who are seeing this on the cloud native interactive landscape map and like, what is this? I don't understand. Can I just use it? Can I just pick it up and play?
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think that, I mean, that is definitely, I think, the aim, but that's the hope of when we're in Sandbox. Those are the things I think we want to figure out, but we don't want to just figure them out on our own either. So it's like, we think that the Sandbox designation can actually help us get more people engaged. You know, it's kind of a chicken and egg problem in that, in some regard, right? Like, you know, I think sometimes we hope that the Sandbox status would help us get more momentum around other contributors coming in, and then that will help us also get the, you know, more opinionated way of doing things, right? As opposed to a looser collection of tools.
Yeah, and that's why we're having this conversation, because it's really useful for us, I think, to understand like what your aspirations are for it. Because as soon as we can kind of figure that out, then we can come to an alignment and say, yeah, actually that makes a whole lot of sense. So this is just part of my probing.
Yeah, I mean, like the financial services customer I mentioned, one of the reasons they got excited about this was they have a certain global system integrator they're working with today. If they bring that global system integrator in to modernize their apps, they also get this giant tool set that's specific to that global system integrator, right? And half of it's proprietary and licensed and whatever else. If that global system integrator uses the conveyor tooling and does this, now suddenly all of that is open source. But not only that, the skill sets are presumably more broadly transferable to another global system integrator or another person. And so suddenly, like, you know, anyway, I think that's really the value of this, is how we can kind of make this an open, you know, an open and kind of de facto standard for how you do modernization. And then you have a lot less chance of, you know, I guess getting locked into whether it's skill sets or tools or whatever. So
Thank you.
Yeah. Are there any other questions, or I don't know what the right next step is. If you guys see a next.
If you would give us some time to watch the materials and maybe have an internal discussion, and we can get back to you, and also to the specific TUC questions that we should answer.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that'd be great.
I mean, it is Sandbox. So I think that once we have like everything in place, it should move forward. Then I'd assume rather quickly, so it shouldn't hold you back too much. It's different for an incubation project that has a full diligence and everything. But yeah, thanks for preparing that material. That's definitely helpful. And I think in a project that's not directly fitting into what other projects are doing, we often also need some time to know, okay, how do we position and make this work? Also to Alex's point, like in the CNCF landscape, where would you put it?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah.
Kind of hard as well.
If you have any questions or even like any concerns like that come up, just let us know and we can get them addressed for sure. We're on OnConveyor on Kubernetes Slack. So
Awesome,
Not
thank you.
CNC. There's also a conveyor in CNCF Slack, by the way, but it's very quiet.
yeah, that was, we decided to move it over to the Kubernetes Slack. We thought it fit better there for whatever reason. I'm not sure why. I can't remember the decision, but.
Okay. So looking at the time, I would move over to Josh. Actually, Josh, you have two agenda items today. That makes you really famous today.
The first one is what I was thinking about sharing with you all today, and then I realized I was looking at last time's notes. I was like, oh, I said I would walk through Potato Head. So I, before this meeting, briefly, made sure that my environment works and I can demo that too. But we'll get to that in a second. So first thing on patterns. So a little background in the cooperative delivery, working, whatever it's called, coordinated delivery. One thing we really want to do is, we want to kind of start from the ground up and build a collection of patterns that not only help others, but help us understand the principles that are going on in the landscape. And as I proposed it to our group a couple of weeks ago, and then as I was doing it, we kind of realized this is actually a little bit broader. And so that's why I wanted to bring it up with the whole tag. This concept, and you're already we're already dancing around it with Potato Head. It's just kind of formalizing, well, I don't know, kind of. It is formalizing that and adding a little bit. The idea is basically, hey, we're gonna, let's have an initiative to publish and maintain a library of recommended practices, recommended patterns with complete docs, in a standard template, and runnable code. And I'll even add testable code, meaning it should be able to be tested in CI so that if people want to change it, they can with relative confidence. Yeah, so that issue is basically, hey, what do you think of this? And should we, officially try to build such a library of patterns and, start to kind of formalize what that process would look like? So that's that. One thing I'll mention on that also is that the observability group, open telemetry group, is doing the same. They're looking into the same thing. I actually was going through all the CNCF channels yesterday, and I found that like last week they had a bunch of meetings about this. They referenced Potato Head and Google's microservices demo and a couple other ones. And they want to build basically a playground, and they're already also kind of looking into this in a library of patterns. So I wrote in their Slack, you can see, and like, hey, if you guys want to use Potato Head, then that would be great. Or if whatever it is, but the relevance to here is that they're also looking to this library of patterns concept.
It would be really interesting to get, I'll talk to Bartek actually, but it'd be really interesting to get collaboration with Tag Observability, because they will have an opinion on a lot of this stuff. And for example, introducing open tracing, that will be very opinionated on whether or not you want to have a sidecar running or not, and there needs to be some conversation, and there's not a one size fits all approach. So I actually think almost the number one goal should be to collectively aggregate these different sort of research projects into library patterns and try and say, hey, app delivery will orchestrate it, and we will help you to build out your goals. But let's do it at least in a single place in a CNCF project that's already established. Let's not reinvent the wheel. So I almost think that should be almost the highest priority at this point in time, is get those collaborators in early on.
Great. So to the degree that any of you can influence them too, I wrote in there, I know Scott Rigby from the GitOps group has met with them. I don't think the GitOps group really has this thing, but he has a connection to them also. So they're already kind of aware of us.
Is it Richie? He's still chair, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll talk to Richie. See if maybe they could be really interested to collaborate.
Yeah, I think that they talked with Chris Anishik, and he said, learn from what the Open GitOps project did, which is good. The governance is good. What I can see, I don't think Open GitOps actually has any code yet. So that might be where we partner, like the actual content. Like they've built this kind of framework. We can shift Potato Head or microservices demo, whatever it is. What was Microsoft's Pet Shop or something, music store? We can shift that as the main base for the framework they've built.
I think one of the things that I'm just very conscious of is it was in our non-goals to create a new kind of standard. And if you start creating template libraries, you're going to start creating a new kind of standard pretty quickly, because people look to the CNCF projects as the standard. So it's just, you've got to walk a line there very tentatively, that the reason that you're building these template libraries is to capture the current practices, not to set them.
That's pretty interesting. I definitely would not want these to be standards. They're practices, best practices, but recommended practices at best. And they should be vetted by people like us and other experts, so that people,
this is another contentious point. It's not that it's best practice, it's that it is a practice. So like using customized Helm, et cetera, these different tools and platforms, we can just create a collection of examples, but we shouldn't put a recommendation behind them in terms of what is the best practice.
Okay, yeah. I think that might pop up, like maybe not so much in like a list of tools like Argo, Flux, and Captain, but like when we're talking about integrating a bunch together, like with cooperative delivery, like I actually put up a proposal because the best way so this 167 is followed by 168, which I didn't bring up here, but it's an actual proposal for something that I would do for cooperative delivery. And the proposal is about generically deploying databases using crossplane, and then generically getting a binding using service binding operator or Vault or whatever, container secret store, CSI, some form of that. So like, we're kind of trying to develop some ideas, not necessarily to say this is the only way, but like, here's some ways, let's start the conversation about this.
I think to Alex's point, I think wording is very important here. Because as soon as we say this is a best practice of how to, for example, deploy your database on Kubernetes with crossplane, and people not using cloud crossplanes or other approaches will come after us, say, and they will always bring up the non-king-making rule. Mm-hmm. But to that point, I think it's one practice. We might make it even call it a set of curated tutorials. That doesn't even make it a best practice, a good practice. I'm usually liking good practices more because best is always hard. That was also initially the idea behind Potato Head, just showing people, helping them to get started, showing them how to solve certain types of problems, and providing educational material, I think, is better and also more clear than telling them this is the way how it should be done. And honestly, then also having like an open, being very clear on the contribution model there, like what you need to provide to make this work. Because one thing you always have to be careful once you start something in the CNCF, and especially show how a tool works. I can tell from experience, a lot of people will show up just showcasing their tools, but not taking responsibility to like actually maintain and drive these things, which is, I think, something we all want. We want to ensure a certain level of quality.
That's seen that in Potato Head
area. It must be testable. We must have a way to actively update that it gets updated properly by people, that they are willing to also then take the time to engage with folks. So there must be, from the people who are participating, they must be willing to have some sort of time investment into this, because nothing worse than working on a library of tutorials. I think every one of us knows. And then you figure that the tutorial is outdated. It's using an old version. It was run with an old version of Kubernetes that's no longer working because there's some manifests in there that are not working, or maybe the version of the tools that were used in there are outdated. So I think somebody like who's actively owning it, and for us having a means saying, okay, this is still valid today, I think is super important. But maybe that angle of tutorial might be better. Just proposing it here for all of you to come.
Just add something to that. I've got the goals and non-goals up. I think you're pretty close to the mark. I think if my advice would be is go ahead and do it. Like, create a bunch of different patterns for deployment. You know, you can even have a GitOps pattern in there like we do. We've got some Argo content. Do a bunch of that stuff. That's fine. But I would repurpose, add a preface on the rubric of the Potato Head repository saying this is a collection, a curation of relevant industry patterns that are being used. That is what I would say, and quite specifically that. And then the real work isn't that. The real work is the day 2 exercise of looking at the patterns that we see surfacing time and time again. Okay, with Argo and Flux and non-GitOps systems, such as, you know, more of the imperative command, imperative kind of pipelines, they all have to accomplish secret management somehow. What are the most popular ways? And that actually is where it comes to this idea of focused questions. And so if we look at all these things, we're going to start to get to the real meat of what this working group is about. And it's looking for the patterns in the industry and then producing the white paper. So I think go ahead with what you're doing, but I think it's really important to recognize the fact that it'll be part of the journey, and the rest of it is going to be then reflecting on what is the current state of it. So I would expect us to be starting a white paper on this in the next 6 months, looking at what we're seeing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for the feedback. I think the top thing I'm taking away is this is not a bunch of recommended practices. This is a bunch of practices, and recommendations come after us by someone else. Cool.
Absolutely. And I think just to meet you halfway in the middle, they should also be like exemplars of what works, not necessarily what's best. So things that are relevant, they are functional, you can just download it and it works. And there is a level of responsibility of the curators and the maintainers to keep them functional.
Definitely. Yeah. Hopefully, I'll just add, hopefully the framework is high level, but hopefully as like, you know what, let me jump into the Potato Head demo and then you'll see kind of what I'm thinking. So that's the next one. I just am gonna do the top two here. So there's two major updates that Potato Head. Oh, before I jump to that, does anybody have anything else to say on the patterns collection stuff?
It would be nice to get kind of a check-in of what we've got, you know, like number, like we've got 15 different types of patterns and they are on a scale of, you know, everything from configuration management to actual deployment, because, you know, there's quite a lot of stuff in there, right?
In Potato Head specifically, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe in the next couple of tag meetings, you know, in a couple of weeks, maybe after the holidays, we get sort of an assessment of where we are.
Okay, well, that's okay. So let me go ahead and do that now, actually. So not exactly that, but let me go ahead and show you Potato Head and give you a, did I lose you?
I mean, I did contribute on it, and so did Thomas once upon a time, but I feel like it's changed quite a lot.
Probably mostly because of stuff I've been
Yes,
doing.
it is.
I know, Josh, you're like a force of nature on this project.
I just I did, you know, I did this for Microsoft with their SDK for Go, and we built this library of runnable tests and things like, so it's like a natural kind of thing. I don't know. I'm surprised we don't have it. Well, we do have it. So I'm surprised it's not more of a thing with CNCF, to be honest. Like, let's get runnable examples. Okay, so let me walk you through two things here. So I have two themes I want to share. Potato Head, the adoption of multi-service in kubectl, Helm, and Customize. The addition of tests, runnable tests for those three. I'm not going to go. I did also do Flux and Catch so far, but I won't do those. We can do those another time. And then if we have time and you're interested, I can show you the refactor. And that now has end-to-end tests. It actually spins up a cluster and things like that too. So I guess at its simplest, the idea here, kubectl, I actually am using a template now for these readmes. I didn't check it in yet, but I'm thinking I would eventually. They all kind of say deliver with whatever. Then they say, here's how to deliver, here's how to test, here's how to test the API endpoint. So they kind of walk you through it. And then there's a test file, which you have the option of running if you have an up cluster already. So like here's Potato Head, I can delivery kubectl test. So I have a running cluster here, and this will just go ahead and spin that up. So yeah, for kubectl, it's very straightforward. I mean, it's just manifest. In order to make the test work, you have to substitute in another image name, but it comes up and then you can call this endpoint if you wanted. And you see all the containers are running. I'm not going to call the API there. The same thing, I'm going to go ahead and just delete that whole namespace. Oops. And it works kind of the same. We should look at the chart, because that's where things start to change with the multi-service. So I'll just quickly show you that. So I mean, we could have done this differently. I basically broke it into 6 deployments and 6 services. And then I have some common properties that are in the values YAML. And then again, test SH will just deploy that out. And I could run it for you here, and it would delivery chart test. Oops. And it will, do the same thing and go through and install it. And then finally, customize is the other. I consider these kind of the bases for everything else. So that's why I'm walking through them now. Here I kind of stripped it down to the most basic. So we have a base, which you could deploy directly, and we have an overlay, which represents kind of a production deployment. And then the test, again, just basically substitutes in, testable container images. And the same thing here, you could run delivery customize test. This one actually deletes it too, so. Yeah. So all those kind of come together. Oh yeah, and then I was going to show you around this. The idea of these tests is to ultimately put them into whatever kind of CI/CD system we have. So like right now, and this, there's work to maybe refine this, but there's test kubectl and it calls test sh. There's test helm, test sh. Here's customize. Here's catch. And here's flux. So kind of, this is, I'm just kind of putting this pattern in as I go, like a README that's following a certain template, a test which spins up, and in the case of customize, I even had to delete everything. And then putting that test into the GitHub workflow so that when people make changes, recommended changes in the future, they can't check it until it passes. And, we know we have some signals.
Can I ask a question, Josh? So are these actually performing any tests, or they're just called test shell?
Well, they're E2E tests. What do you mean? Like,
so yeah, are they validating the pods are running, that sort of thing?
Yeah, sure. Like, let me show
Okay.
you just the basic kubectl one. You'll see, let's see, deployment, blah, blah, blah. And then it'll wait. See, this is already met because I actually had it up, but it was waiting. It was a kubectl wait. This one's only checking for podtato main. But like, it was waiting for, yeah. So in other words, the other images could have failed here and you wouldn't have known, but you could submit a PR for that. But here you are. And actually, if you go through, so it doesn't call, well, if you go through the instructions, I could actually walk you through curling here, this API endpoint, and how you could do that. It doesn't do that here, but I will show you, if you're interested, I can keep going. The Potato Head refactor has been the next project I'm working on. And here it does include a complete end-to-end test. So it tests the API endpoints.
I mean, I would love to, I'm just conscious of if we had anything else on the agenda, but I'd love to go through this. I really like that you put it into a single project, because I see that we've got 3 separate folders for the application components at the moment. So I see have you put them into a single package there? Oh
yeah, this refactor, if I walk you through the refactor, yeah, I put them, I've kind of unified everything into one, still kept them under a subdirectory. I talked that over with Thomas.
Yeah,
and we thought
get that in an MR now, a PR now, because that's been driving me crazy.
And then I should show you, I pretty significantly refactored the internals to make main a little more just generic, and then put more stuff into these things, into packages, into shared packages. So like, and this is actually going to be pretty helpful to me. So I'll give you an example here. The service discoverer, which exists here now. Let's see if I can find it. Is this it? Yeah, looks something like this. I've actually turned it into an interface, and there's right now a static service discoverer, which is basically what we had before. But this provides a great opportunity for cooperative delivery to demonstrate injection of service discovery, dynamic service discovery. The service handler I factored out. So this is how the main thing calls off to all the parts. So it's got the handler is extracted. Here's the part handler. Which would, and that's also, I genericized, there's a lot of stuff here. So I genericized the part command. So basically for any given part, it uses the same entry. The only thing is it looks to, let's see if I can find it, to know what part it's supposed to serve. I have to look again at desired part image name. Yeah, it looks to the URL that was sent to it. And in fact, what this guy serves, version part number, there it is. So I've actually moved some of those things into version. So part number actually now is dynamically controlled. This is a change. This is this is probably the biggest API change, is that I added this environment variable, which then says, hey, serve 1, serve 2, serve 3, serve 4, so it's dynamic, as opposed to recompiling for different versions.
Yeah, that's awesome work.
Yeah, thanks. And then this one actually, so if I switch over to my other shell, and I do say, actually I put it into make. So I do a make test services. This actually will go through and build
Just had a question about that. I mean, I almost wonder if we could use the makefile in the root project to drive these examples rather than forcing the users to jump into the test shell. I mean, what do you feel about that?
That's a good idea. Yeah, just say make kubectl, so I don't have to.
Yeah, exactly that. And also, just make is powerful, right? So you can do a lot of stuff with the with flags and arguments in makefile that would be a bit clunky to do in the shell scripts.
Yeah, expand the make. I could take that.
I'll open an issue.
Yeah, some other interesting stuff it opens up. Like I'd like to add a handler that does CRUD operations over a database for my cooperative delivery stuff, because I want to use that as an example. So like now with this refactoring, it won't be hard to add another handler. That's kind of one of the goals. It won't be hard to reason about, hey, I want to inject open telemetry into a hand. Oh, okay, well, I'll just go over to, lost it, but where is this? I'll just go over to this part handler and add in like, open telemetry to, or whatever, tracer.start span or something, or add to span or whatever it is. Yeah, so here in the background, I've got this. It did work last time. Oh, and I should show you, actually, this is, forget about showing it to you on my own local. So I was gonna go into GitHub. It'll redirect me. And you can actually see that these checks are running and passing. And I actually have, there's actually 2 now. So where can I go to the actions?
Maybe we could get some help from the chaos testing group to destroy some of the limbs of Potato Head.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm hoping. So here you can actually see this ran in the background, like you asked before, Alex. Await readiness. Here I did await the readiness of all of them, and that's what's happening on the left here too. You can see. Then we guess, I just did a kubectl get deployments test, and then I test the APIs, and if they fail, it lets me know. And then I just get kubectl logs for each, just for curiosity's sake. And it all passes. So I'm pretty happy about
this is really cool. I mean, if you can get this merged in, Josh, I'm going to make a video on it, I think.
Okay.
It's really useful stuff.
I've got a couple more pieces to get it up to parity with what exists, but then I'll do a PR and we can discuss it that way.
Awesome.
I mean, I did open an issue actually already. So if you want to discuss before, first I did open a PR and then I was like, well, wait a second, there's a lot here. Maybe I should start with an issue. Let me find this here. It's number 120, I think. Oh, no, sorry. It's number 120 in Potato Head. Here, number 120. So I kind of said, so I got a couple more to add. Thomas had added in a version incrementation facility, and I need to add that in, and Trivy. So I think that's it. Okay, I think that's all that I was gonna say. I put in the new tutorials for kubectl Helm Customize. I showed you that. The refactored core with the end-to-end test showed you that. If we want, I mean, I've done catch and flux. On my short list is Argo and Captain, but I haven't gotten to them yet. So I can show you them, some future time. You're getting the idea though. And I mentioned this already above, that it would be nice to get observability group also partying with us here. Okay.
I could build an example. I mean, I'm cautious about suggesting this, but I could build an example for Nomad. That's a HashiCorp product. So I'm not entirely sure whether I want to, because well, I suppose we have some vendor products. Perhaps.
Yeah, I think they're fine. So we had this also when we were looking into Catch and others.
Okay.
I think it's fine to have things in there that people can actively try. So I actually worry more that we can automatically test them, also like what Josh just shown, which kind of means they need to have at least an open capabilities for us to test it. I mean, if it would be like super proprietary, we couldn't test it. Then I would not put it in there.
Makes sense.
Well,
okay, I'll add it to the issues list.
Yeah, one thing that I have kind of been dancing around, I mentioned it in one of our chats like a long time ago, like, hey, we're demonstrating all these ways. Once you have an existing cluster to deploy things on it, what about all the various ways you have to build clusters? Which that your question about Nomad kind of reminded me of that. It's maybe that's a little different. Not that it's not so valuable, but I just wanted to call out that this Christian Hernandez has been starting something. I'm not sure if that might dance around that, being able to deploy Kubernetes in a few different ways. I don't know, I haven't gone deep into it, but that's what he said.
One suggestion is that this is quite a pivotal project for the tag. In the cooperative delivery working group, perhaps we could have a roadmap meeting at some point or catch up around the roadmap of Potato Head.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I don't see this as, I mean, yeah, I'm using it heavily in cooperative delivery, but I don't see it as cooperative delivery's project. I see it as the whole tags project. That's why I'm presenting it here.
And it's actually larger than the tag. It crosses the tags, which is nice, just because it's convenient, but it's established and there's a lot of active participation on it. So as I said, it would be incredible if we could get folks from chaos testing working group and the tag observability to participate on this as well.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Scott, how you doing?
Hey, I'm pretty good. Had to come in late today, but nice to see you all.
Yeah, well, now I don't think I saw you before, but one of the things that I mentioned is that tag observability, it seems to, I think you talked to them about a patterns library or playground thing that they're trying to spin up. And I know, and so I mentioned to them in their thread, like I've been pursuing that for app delivery. And I'm kind of thinking like, hey, you guys have this whole scaffolding already around open GitOps. Maybe this library fits into what you've already created. So.
Yep. Exactly. And had been talking with Matt about that for a while too. Yeah, in short, I'm happy to talk with them and just kind of show, okay, here are the steps that we went through. Specifically for for GitOps working group and Open GitOps, what we did for governance, because that was drawn from like the findings. I don't know, I want to say findings, but let's say discussions with people in other CNCF projects, several of which I'm part of and some that I haven't been, to try to understand what's worked over time and what hasn't as well. Just so we could kind of avoid some commonly noted pitfalls. So yes, happy to do that.
That might help with Alex, some of the things you brought up around governance and not king making. Could use a little guidance on that.
Really quick, one small note about that is that there's a oh, I'm so sorry. I think it's tag contributor strategy, and then there's also a maintainer circle that's meeting a little less regularly now. But when there are people that want to connect with folks in the maintainers circle, that's kind of like people who are interested in this across the different projects within CNCF. Usually, sometimes there is an effort to make time for that, and meetings will happen, and so that's one of the places I was able to also get reviews on the governance from folks there, which was really nice. We didn't really change a whole lot by that time, but there were a few things that were mentioned that were valuable.
Yeah, really good idea. They would be a major audience for the thing too. So having them early and often.
I think one of the things that maybe it's just a personal aspiration, but I would really like to try and use Potato Head project as a lightning rod for some of the other tags who are struggling to get momentum behind some of the initiatives and tangible work they want to do. It's a historic problem in like tag observability. There's a lot of people, too many chefs or too many cooks, they call it, right? But nobody actually wants to do the work, right? It comes down to like 10 people or 5 people. So it would be really nice to be able to use the momentum we've got behind this project with some of the awesome contributions with people like Josh, and to say, hey, come show us how open telemetry should look in the context of Potato Head.
Yeah. I might also talk maybe to the CNCF whether we could do potentially a webinar on what we have done on Potato Head, because there's really a lot there, and also Josh put a lot of work into this as well. It has really value for the community, and I think it's still a very well kept secret. A lot of people can learn a lot from this project. So I think you should definitely submit a talk, by the way, for KubeCon on this. Especially like, not just what it does per se, but also what you have done on the record, like what you showed us today. Because these are things that people don't even know that they might be struggling with in maybe half a year from now, and you've already solved it for them. So I think usually they are reserved to companies doing them, but I have to ask Amy whether there's any chance we potentially can do something out of Tag App Delivery. Maybe you can always set up a webinar as some of the people who we are here, but we should try an official channel. And Josh, you just let us know when you think, okay, the project is not at a level where we really want to let people jump on it. And maybe getting close to Christmas season or holiday season. This is something people might want to play over Christmas, maybe with, or just.
I was I was thinking the opposite. I was like, well, I'll try to get it ready by the beginning of January. But yeah, okay. I try to.
Josh,
I know what happens to developers when they get to like a week or longer off.
We can do some code.
Yeah.
Josh, I can help you get it over the line if that helps. I can spend some time this next week.
I think like the refactor I kind of can do, but there's still a lot of the downstream, like the captains and the Argo and the operator that's in there, the Helm operator, like those need to be updated for multi-service.
Yeah.
So
honestly, I would reach out to those projects. I mean, it's also some value for those projects that they can get it. So that's like what I did with regarding Helm. I just reached out to the Helm community. Like, can you take this? I mean, if you really want to be there, you should be actually taking it.
yeah.
Same
they might have a better recommendation.
Others, we just to ask them, hey, do you want to update the example? Because the funny thing is that all projects have demo apps. We take kind of like the burden out of maintaining them to some extent, but we want to have the examples in like one central place. So I think usually they should be open to this. I think the best way to maybe get this done is create an issue for those projects. That's what I learned in the past. If you create, if you write on Slack, they might or might not reply, but there are people obviously looking at issues that are coming in, like creating them on both sides, cross-linking them. That was what was usually working best for me, because then you have people looking at it. And that's also the way I would handle it going forward. Like if your test cases break, you get a notification from us that with the latest release of your project test cases break. And I think that's how we also do like the day 2 operations part of Alex that Alex mentioned also. That's how we can ensure that people keep examples up to date, because otherwise it would say, well, we have to remove it from the official collection because it no longer works and we don't want people to be disappointed. I mean, it's not being the police there, but we have most likely having this being used by people who learn Kubernetes, and they don't want to go in there and start debugging super deep why a rather complex example is not working. But I think most projects will be open to do this.
Okay, I'll reach out more. Yeah, what's up, Scott?
Super quick question. Just on that one note, I know that was an example, but I'm a Helm maintainer as well, and also fairly interested in this space where the limits of the Helm the current version of Helm, the current version of Helm's client really is outside of the scope of anything running in the cluster. However, what is in scope is the SDK, and one of the primary ingesters of the SDK are controllers or operators, right? So it's
The Helm operator SDK.
Yeah. So what I'm curious about, and I think this might be my ignorance here, is what Helm operator are you talking about, or where does that live? Just so that I know.
Yeah, it's right in there. It's under delivery. What is it? Maybe it's even called operator.
That was I think from the operator framework. So obviously you can write like a fully fledged operator, but the very easy way on using an operator with the operator framework, which is the example that's in there, it's just more or less reusing a Helm chart. It's not the ideal way to be fair to use an operator,
I
but
see.
it's an easy packaging type of approach. And that's due to the history of the project, because I just wanted to show people you can only use an operator to update something using a CRD.
Got
and
it.
not having to write a lot of Go code that they not necessarily might need to write. Well, to be fair, it wouldn't be that much Go code necessarily.
Yeah, that makes sense. One of the things that I'm planning to do, I don't think it's a conflict of interest in any way. I think it's very helpful because I'm also a Flux maintainer. The Flux controller, formerly in Flux 1, there was a Flux Helm operator that really managed the life cycle of Helm releases and the metadata around Helm repos and things like that. And in the current version of Flux, it's more distributed so that there are multiple controllers. Rather than writing on the operator framework, it's just using basically what the operator framework is using too at this point, which is like kube builder on top of controller runtime. So at this point, there's really not a whole lot of difference except for some of the lifecycle things, and that's not. So basically, so in Flux 2, the control, it's really a controller, not an operator at this point, not on the operator framework. And I don't know if that means that there should be no overlap there, or if you think that it's good to connect those because those projects are so closely aligned now, kube builder and the operator framework. I don't know. That's a question. Yeah.
I think I'll go back to what Alex said before, which was like our goal is just to demonstrate existing practices, like not necessarily to say you should do it with an operator or a chart or so.
Okay. Well, the reason that makes sense, because the reason I'm mentioning it is that that at this point there are a couple of controllers that use Helm SDK. I know Rancher, Matt Farina from Rancher's been working on some cool things there, and the Flux Helm controller makes very full use of the Helm SDK. So I think it's a very good example to show people how it works, especially because if you're going to be, underneath the operator in part of controller runtime anyway is some underdocumented information about working with Kubernetes conditions. There's documentation out there. It's just there aren't a lot of examples, really good examples. I think Cluster API is a really good example, and we've been refactoring the Flux controllers to make better use of conditions, and even wrote a package to help other people use that, whether they're doing GitOps or not. So that I don't know if that is something you want to be related to the operator stuff, but if it is, I could link to that, and there's really good documentation around it. And by the way, I'm planning on adding better links to that from the Helm documentation too in the SDK section.
Okay, maybe
it's just there are lots of good examples.
Would you be interested in refactoring the existing operator demo? Here I'm recruiting you. Whatever.
Yes, but I can't volunteer to do it right meow.
Okay.
I definitely would be interested in looking at it, and I think that it's in the long run, yeah. I don't know what the scope of it. I don't know what the scope of it is, but I'm happy to look. So anyway, I agree with what Alois said about the issues, like adding an issue there is probably a good idea, but I just wanted to mention that for the Helm team, most likely, unless there's something specific with just exemplifying how to use the SDK, most likely the Helm team would just be like, no, I don't want anything to do with this because it's not nothing to do with it, but just out of scope for the design of the Helm client. It is within the scope of the SDK though, so yeah.
I think we're at time.
Oh, sorry, did I take up too much time there at the end?
No, not
I
at all.
think finally we have this discussion. I think to Josh's point, we're currently looking for somebody from an app delivery perspective who's taking care of the operator example. So
Okay.
I think we are very pragmatic here, and that was also the approach that we were taking, because the idea was we help people learn app delivery on the task of doing it. And while documentation is super important, and usually we don't have enough people for documentation, I think right now Josh is like the lonely coder right now, together with help from some others who's trying to do this, and he's in desperate need of some help of people who can help him write some of this or support him on this task, so that we, for the wider community, enable them to see how they can use it. And again, it's a very simple operator that just deploys a couple of microservices, but still it's work that needs to be done. I think that's where we want him to support.
Okay, then in short, sorry, I guess I could have summarized that a little quickly, and I'll be super fast because now we need to leave. I also know a few people on the team that I'm working on at Weaveworks who are working with operators every day, and especially doing some of the work for Flux and GitOps for the operator hub. So maybe, how about this? Maybe Josh, me, and perhaps I'll bring in one of those other people, can have a chat with you about what's needed, and then we can just take it from there.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Reach out to me on the CNCF Slack. That's probably the best way to reach me. I'm happy to help.
Will do.
I'd love more contributors, so if you could help me get them, thank you.
Cool.
Okay, I think then we are already over time and done for today. I think it was a productive meeting. Thanks, Josh, for sharing, and really appreciate your work here. You would definitely deserve a potato head t-shirt. We also need to find somebody who's building a Christmas hat, so we need a designer now on the team as well. So that's okay. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, we'll write on the mailing list. I think we can have another meeting in 2 weeks from now, and it's going pretty close to holiday season, and we'll see how many people will have actually time to join, but being conscious about it's getting to the end of the year. Let's see how many people have time to, or I have other commitments, and discuss this by the mailing list. All right. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day, evening, wherever you are on this beautiful planet. Bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye.